We're going to spend our time talking about three main parts: answering the questions, the details about the ACT, and then we'll go into an overall picture and then into each of the sections. So first of all, generally speaking, the ACT is a multiple choice test and there's no penalty for guessing. So what that means, you should have every question should have an answer, even if it's a wild guess. The best way to wild guess, best way is not to guess, but if you have to, a wild guess should remain consistent throughout. In other words, you don't want to guess A on one. If it's a wild guess, that means you haven't eliminated any of the answer choices. A on one, B on the next, C on the next, that is not going to statistically get you the best results. What you want to do is before the exam, tell yourself, if I have to make a wild guess, I'm going to select A, B, C, D, whatever it is. And then stick with that. Every time you have a wild guess, that's one that you don't know, have any idea what the correct answer is, no process of elimination, you haven't been able to eliminate anything, answer always whatever your choice was before the exam. Always A, always B, always C, always D, whatever it is. So the next step is try and eliminate something. If you have 4 answer choices and you can eliminate 2, your odds have gone up tremendously. You have a 50-50 chance now of getting it correct. So process of elimination is a very important tool to use. Okay, let's talk about the details of the ACT. You have 4 main subject areas. You'll be tested on English, you'll be tested on math, reading, and science reasoning. The test is 215 questions long. It lasts approximately 3 hours. I say approximately because there's some time at the beginning and there'll undoubtedly be some time at the end, and your break may run a little longer or shorter, but it's about 3 hours to 3.5 hours. English. The English will give you 5 passages, and what they're testing is your grammar. They're going to test mechanics and usage, punctuation, basic grammar, sentence structure, rhetorical skills, strategy, organization, style. And if you look in your materials, you'll see percentages by each one of those, so you can tell which one is more heavily tested, which things are less heavily tested. But you'll have 5 passages. They'll underline a portion of each passage. There'll be about 15 questions per passage. So you'll have 15 different underlinings. There may be 2 things wrong with a particular underlining, but you'll have 15 different areas where they'll ask questions. And then the underlined portion of the passage will have something wrong, or it may not. So they'll give you alternative correct ways of structuring this piece that's underlined, and you have to select A, B, C, or D. A, B, or C, meaning there's something correct about one of those, or D, which means there's nothing incorrect about the way that it is currently within the passage. So it's make one of the 3 changes, A, B, or C, or leave it like it is. There's 75 questions on the English portion, and it's 45 minutes long. Next is mathematics. Mathematics will test pre-algebra, elementary algebra, intermediate algebra. So it's going to test all areas of algebra. They'll also test coordinate geometry, plane geometry, and also some trigonometry. So those are the areas of math that they'll test. Math is 60 questions, 60 minutes. You have on average 1 minute per question, and the questions are all multiple choice. Everything on the ACT is multiple choice. Then you'll probably get a break, 10-15 minute break. Come back and do some reading. Reading comprehension, in my opinion, is one of the more difficult sections. Reading comprehension consists of 40 questions and 35 minutes. 10 questions per passage. They'll give you 4 passages, and the passages may be prose or fiction, humanities, a passage on social studies, and a passage on natural sciences. So you get 1 passage on each one of those, and it's not the content necessarily of that subject matter. They're not testing your overall understanding of natural science or your overall understanding of humanities or social studies. They're testing your ability to look at what is there in front of you and be able to answer some questions about it. What's the main idea? What did this sentence mean? Those kinds of questions. They put it into a context of natural science, social studies, humanities, etc., but they're not testing your understanding of those subject areas. They're testing your ability to look at material, read it, analyze it, and understand it. So you have 4 passages, 10 questions per. That's 40 questions, 35 minutes to do it, about 1 minute per question. And finally, you'll have a science reasoning section. Now, science reasoning, for those of you who haven't taken a lot of science, may seem like it might be a little more difficult. But science reasoning is really nothing about science. It's the same approach as reading. They're not testing your ability within that subject matter. You don't have to come into the ACT with any understanding or knowledge about science. It might be a little bit helpful so that you're a little bit familiar with the terminology, but they're not testing your understanding of physics, for example. They're really testing your logical reasoning skills, and they're putting it within a science backdrop. They're not testing your actual understanding of science. So it's really, when they say science reasoning, they could have made it English reasoning or baseball reasoning. It doesn't really matter what that subject matter is. It's the reasoning part that they're testing. They're testing your ability to reason, to logically analyze. So you'll get 40 questions, 35 minutes, and there'll be 7 groups of series of data, of information. And you have to take that data or information, and again, the context is not what's important here. It's the information, and then they make some conclusions. Now, what's wrong or right with that jump from this information to these conclusions? That's what they're testing, is your logical reasoning skills. So you'll have 215 questions and about 2 hours and 55 minutes to do it. So it's a fairly lengthy test. Now let's talk about scoring. You'll get 2 different scores. Actually, you get 3 different scores. You'll get a raw score. Your raw score is the number of questions that you got correct out of 215. The raw score is important, and it's not important. It's important to get as many right as you can, but what they're really, when they give you their weighted score, their scaled score, that's the one that gets published. So the scaled score is how you did compared with everybody else. If you got 215 correct out of 215, you did very well. If you got 5 right and everybody else only got 4 right, you still did very well. So neither one of those is very likely to happen, but it illustrates the point. The scaled score is the one that's published, and that will be between a 1 and a 36. And what that does is take the infamous curve, and it ranks everybody, gives you percentile rankings within that curve, and then they divide that curve up between 1 and 36. So you have 36 different percentiles within the curve of the people who took the exam on that particular day. So you're being graded against everybody else who's taken the exam. So if a particular grouping on the exam was easier or more difficult, everybody took it at the same time, everybody had the same advantage or disadvantage, and so it's fair. Plus you'll get a sub-score. So you'll get your raw score, that's the total number you got right, then they'll average that out, weight it out, and compare it to how everybody else did, and that's your scaled score, or your weighted score. That's the one between 1 and 36, that's the one that the colleges are going to look at. And then you'll get sub-scores between 1 and 18. The 1 to 18, again, is a weighted or averaged score compared to how everybody else did. And the 1 to 18 you'll get on English, mathematics, reading, and science reasoning. So you'll get a score for each one of those sub-tests so that your college or university that you're applying to can see that you may have particularly done well in 3 of the 4 and your overall score went down because of a bad score on one section. So then the university or college can take that into consideration, where they wouldn't be able to do that if they just had an overall weighted score and didn't see that it was at a certain point because of, you didn't do well on science reasoning, for example, but you did well on everything else. So the university can take that into consideration. So there you have it. That's the ACT in a nutshell.